Hi, it's Eric with Island Expats. And some of you are probably wondering, what are you talking about that every expat goes through when they move to a new country? How can that be? Well, it's a really good question, and that's what we're going to cover in the video today. And I have to say that I'm working through a couple of these transition phases myself right now, so I can talk about this firsthand as I moved to the Philippines a little over 2 months ago, and I'm actually going through them myself, so I thought it'd be interesting to make a video about it. So today's video is going to focus on the different phases that you go through after arriving in a foreign country. It doesn't really matter which foreign country. If you're an expat and you're in a new place, this is going to happen to you. I want to cover the reasons why these phases actually happen and kind of give you a time frame for each phase. It'll vary a little bit by person, but most everyone will go through all of these 5 phases, usually in linear order, or go back and forth a little bit, but you'll see. Anyway, you're going to go through all 5 phases at one point or another as you transition to a new country. Depending upon how much you struggle, it's going to happen a little faster, or if it's a little bit more easier transition for you, maybe it'll take longer to go through these 5 phases, but I think you will go through it. There are several reasons for going through these various phases as an expat. So stay tuned to see why this would happen to you and what to expect so that you're prepared ahead of time for this very real thing that happens several months after arriving into a new country. And like I said, it's happening to me. And I'm going to show you some examples of it actually happening to me. The first phase is called the honeymoon phase. So when you first arrive to a new country, everything's new, it's exciting, and you usually feel kind of adventurous. You want to go out and explore, check out the landscape, check out the new food. The locals seem very friendly. The food might be a little bit different, but it's still interesting to you. And yeah, there's some inconveniences along the way, but they just seem kind of like part of the charm of just being in a new place, right? So that's kind of the first phase. You're in the honeymoon phase, you're having a good time. And most expats during this time will feel energized, they'll be optimistic from their attitude, and they may even be a little bit adventurous, want to explore the area and see what's around, right? And this time frame for this first honeymoon phase usually is about 4 to 6 weeks for most people, right? There's going to be a few folks that experience it a little before or a little bit after, depending upon how big of an adjustment it is to the new environment around you. All right. The second phase is what they call culture shock. And this happens somewhere between 1 to 3 months, and it's just like reality sets in. And you enter this culture shock phase and you're like, oh, I'm so frustrated. There's a high degree of frustration in this phase. Now for me, I'm in the Philippines, and I kind of hit some of this, right? So it's a very warm climate here. It's pretty much between 85 and 90 degrees every single day, and it's usually around 70% humidity. So for me, after a while, the heat, the humidity, the bureaucracy of the Philippines, they do things very differently than they do in the US. And there's some language barriers, even though a lot of people speak English, not everybody. The younger, they're more taught in school. But that doesn't mean they clearly understand what you're saying, even if they do speak English, right? There's some interpretation of your meaning that they may not understand. And there's a lot of inefficiency here, right? So when you go to do certain things, like last night, I was coming back from the ferry, and I had asked the guard gate before I went to the ferry, can I park the car here for overnight? And they said, yeah, no problem. Didn't mention anything about a cost, whatever. Kind of assumed there'd probably be something. I come back, different guard says, okay, you're in violation. I'm like, I asked for permission to park here in the parking lot, and they said, no problem. In fact, I asked 2 different guys just to be sure. The guy said, nope, you're in violation. You got to pay 200 pesos for each day that you were gone. I said, well, I was gone overnight, so 200 pesos. And he says, nope, 400 pesos, 200 each day. And notice the violation, go down the end of the hall and the last building. So I'm now been gone all day. It's like 8 p.m. and I'm tired. I've traveled back from Cebu. And I now go down and find this booth, and there's like an office. And there's all these different windows, window 1, window 2, window 3, window 4. And so the first thing you do is you take a number, and then you wait and you sit. And when they finally decide to call your number, you're now called up, and then I hand them the slip from the guard, and they said, okay, I'll call you when I'm ready. You sit back down, and the lady said, wait till you're called. 5 minutes later, she calls me back up, and she says, okay, you need to pay $400 according to the guard. And I said, well, I just went overnight, blah, 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 blah. She said, take it up with the guard. So she says, you need to now pay the money. So I give her a 500 peso bill for the 400. I didn't have 4 100s. And she said, okay. And instead of giving me change, she said, sit back down. We'll call you when we're ready. All she's got to do is give me $100 back, 100 pesos back, and I'm out of there. Nope. Sit back down. We'll call your number. Sit back down. There's this screen, big TV screen, different windows, and when your number gets called, you see it. Finally, window 3 calls me and says, okay, come on up. So I come up, and she goes, here's your 100 change, 100 pesos change, and here's your paperwork to get out. So it became like a 3 or 4 step process. Instead of just saying, okay, you owe 400 pesos, give me the 400, and you're out. And I'm not kidding. It took 15 to 20 minutes to pay the parking. So those type of inefficiencies, after a while, just kind of get to you, and that's kind of what I'm talking about, right? And then sometimes the cultural misunderstandings will wear you down. So you have a conversation, you think they understand, you think you have a commitment and a connection on something, and you find out later they didn't understand any of it. So that kind of wears you out a little bit. So at this phase, expats start getting frustrated, right? They're a little bit irritated. They're a little bit homesick because maybe their foreign country or their home country where they came from didn't work that way. It's a little bit more efficient. And they're feeling a little bit misunderstood, and they're kind of like, this is a little bit different than I expected. So this is what I say when many expats actually hit the wall, right? And it happened to me. I'm surprised. I'm a really positive, adventurous, optimistic guy, but it happened to me. And I'm going to show you actual footage of the evening it happened to me because I had Lynn record it because I knew something was going on because I was really getting irritated. So this is the point where these expats, after 4 to 6 weeks, they hit the wall and they really start questioning, did I make the right decision by coming to this foreign country? And it doesn't have to be the Philippines. It could be any foreign country. You just have kind of hit that kind of transition point. So like I said, a few weeks ago, I hit it myself, and I want to show you the actual footage that happened that night because I was really fed up. So you're going to see live footage when it happened. And I just told Lynn, turn on the camera. Here we go. So in this video, I want to talk about kind of what happens. And I've heard this before from other people that have moved over here. But I'm experiencing it right now, so I thought I'd make a video about it while it's live and fresh. So the first month that you're in the Philippines, it's kind of like you're on vacation. And so you're, well, that's interesting, you know, that thing that doesn't work or is different or you can't find. You're like, well, I just adjust to this and to that. And you just go with the flow. And you just know you're a visitor or a foreigner in a different land, and so that's how it is, and you accept it. I'm at 6 weeks now, and I'm getting a little bit frustrated because at 6 weeks, the wheels are starting to come off a little bit as far as like, oh, this is such a fantastic place to live. However, we've been traveling through Mindanao the last week, and I'm really feeling the brunt of the Philippines over here. So just to kind of take you through a couple of things. We're in a hotel room here in Marigusan, which is in kind of like northeast Mindanao. And so we're up in the mountains, and it's much cooler here. And so that part's really positive. It rained like the dickens a couple of days, but it's much cooler. It literally like hits 80 degrees during the middle of the day, and then about 68 at night. So compared to most places in the Philippines, the weather's quite a bit better, other than you're going to have a lot more rain and some fog. However, there are other things here, And I just wanted to show you so you kind of see the difference. But the weather does make a huge difference, because that's the one thing in Bohol. It's hot and it's humid, and it's like that every day. So, and it seems to be hotter by the beach where we live. We're not right on the beach, within a couple kilometers of Alana Beach, which is a popular international spot to go. We like the area that we're at because we're 5 minutes from the airport, and we're about 20 to 30 minutes from the mall there, and a lot of the grocery stores are close by. So we're kind of able to do what we need to do. Here in Marigoussan, you're much further out. And so you're not finding, like, there's not a Jollibee's in Marigoussan. There's not a McDonald's in Marigoussan. They're just local places, and that's fine. Just a little different. But in this hotel that we've been staying in throughout the week, we can't get Wi-Fi in the room. We have to go outside of the room, and then they have a separate room where it's closer to the Wi-Fi router that you sit in order to get a Wi-Fi connection. And it's really a pain, because when you go to check your messages or upload videos or just do a type of work, you know, you can't do it without stepping out of the room. Like right now, we want to watch a movie. It's been kind of a long day. We have air conditioning. Today it's working. The other day it was not working. That makes a difference. The TV, which I'll show you in the footage in just a second, is completely static. You can't even watch it. And so it's just another thing here in the Philippines. But one of the things I'm noticing here right now is everything is so loud, and it's just getting to me. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Let's just go walk over to out the room. In fact, let me get my key. Let's go out the room, and we're just gonna look at the street for a second. Not a major street, but you'll see what I mean. So for me, it was a combination of things. The noise level was really getting to me. Now, we happened to stay at a hotel that was more downtown of this little town, but there were scooters and trucks going by constantly. And a lot of the motorcycles that were going by, the guys had taken off the mufflers. They just think it sounds cool when it's louder, and it just, after a while, gets to you. The other thing beyond just that noise, and there's like sirens and horns and you name it, there's all of these different sounds. Then the next thing that was getting to me were the lamacs. Lamacs are mosquitoes, and we were in a mountainous area, and they were just everywhere. And they were like, white boy tastes good. And I was getting bit all over the place, and I was putting on the off and everything else, trying to be careful, and I still was getting bit, and I was just getting a bit frustrated. And then it just so happened in the hotel we're staying at that the air conditioning decided to stop working. And so now the combination of the heat and humidity just kind of increased my fatigue level, right? And then on top of that, I'm traveling, right? We were in the middle of Mindanao. We're visiting Lynn's family in an area that I don't know. And all these things are happening at once. And I'm tired from traveling and meeting all of the family and going to all these different places after cousin, aunt after aunt. And I just have to say, it really affected my mood and my perspective on that day. And I just had to gut check myself and say, what's up with you? You're not usually like this. What's going on? And that's when I began to research these different phases. Now, in the last few days before this happened to me, just kind of to build the case here for this phase 2 for me of getting frustrated, we were staying at this hotel, and we needed to take the family, and we were going to a place called Mati, which is a beach town, and we actually stayed in a little house, and it's kind of fun. If you go and look at the videos on the channel, you'll see about what it's really like to stay with a Filipino family. And I'm showing you actual footage of 17 of us staying in a 2-bedroom house, and it's pretty entertaining. It's very normal for them. They adjust to it very quickly, much faster than I would. We had karaoke night, we had dance night, we played in the surf, we had a great time. So you should take a look at that video if you haven't seen that. It's what's it really like to be involved with a Filipino family. But anyway, so we went out of town for a couple of days, and before we left, we knew we were coming back into this mountain town called Marigusan, and the hotel that we had been staying in was fine, other than the street noise, and the people were nice and everything. But they had told us that they were sold out when we were coming back to town, and we needed a room for like 1 or 2 more nights. I checked twice, and at the front desk, and to 2 different people, and typical Philippines, they have folders, 1 folder for each room. That was the reservation system. It was a manila folder with a 8.5 by 11 piece of paper in it, with the room number, the date, and who had it reserved. So I realized, they're not digitized, so I hadn't seen that before. But anyway, it's a small mountain town, whatever. But they told us, no, we're totally sold out. You're going to have to find another place to stay. So Lynn and I went around the town, and there was a resort that one time. It was really neat. We'll make a video about that. And it's called Heaven's Gate or something like that. And the owner got tired of dealing with the employees and customer issues, and he closed the resort, and it's being maintained just for private use for his family. It was kind of interesting. So that wasn't available. So we found another little hotel in this town, and it seemed okay. And then after spending 1 night there, we were moving our things around in the room, and a cockroach went climbing across the room. And you know what? I put up with a lot of things, but cockroach is just not one of them. So we left that hotel first thing in the morning, checked out, and went back to the previous hotel. Well, I thought, I know they've told us twice there's no rooms available. We're totally sold out, right? So I thought, well, what if they have a cancellation? It happens. Maybe they got a cancellation. So we go back to the hotel. We speak to the front desk, and they said, oh, all our rooms are available. They had 6 or 8 rooms. All rooms available. You can pick any one you want. Well, 48 hours ago, they told us they were completely sold out. And it's still a mystery to me. What was the misunderstanding? I was really clear. We need a room for these particular nights. Are they available? And they said, no, they're sold out. And then we come back last minute. It's the last resort. And I'm like, oh yeah, we're wide open. Pick any room you want. So these are the things that just kind of wear on you when you have these type of things happen again and again. It's just a misunderstanding. It's not a big deal. It just kind of adds to your fatigue level when you're traveling, and we were trying to find a place to stay. So the point is, just because they can speak some English does not mean that they fully understand you. In fact, I'm still completely puzzled as to what even happened in that situation, because there just wasn't a lot of options in that small town, and that was so specific. So how can it go from totally sold out to totally available? And they never gave an explanation. I tried to ask, and they just looked at me funny. Anyway, fortunately for me, Lynn's very patient. And so when I was going through this phase, I was getting frustrated with the hotel and the cockroach and the mosquitoes and the heat and the noise and the humidity. And I realized that, okay, something's happening to me. I said, Lynn, I'm not sure, but I'm really irritated tonight, and I'm just not normally like this, and she knows it. I said, can you turn on the camera? I'm just going to vent and tell you how I'm feeling, and let's see where this goes. And maybe later I'll understand what it is. And I got to say, I was just feeling really done. Like, man, I just know what's going on here, but I'm not having any fun. So I really had to research it myself, and then I found out that the honeymoon phase was over for me, and I was in the next phase and working through the frustrations of the culture. All right. The third phase is actually called the adjustment phase. And it's somewhere after working through that cultural shock phase where I was frustrated with the cockroach in the hotel and all that. But the cultural shock phase usually is a little bit further out. It typically is about 3 to 6 months or so. And again, it's going to be slightly different for everybody, but that's when you begin to adjust and you begin to adapt and you say, okay, I've learned things a little bit how they're done here. And I understand this country a little bit better and I can accept it a little bit more. And you just begin to adjust your expectations, right? When you're in the previous phase, in the cultural shock, you're pointing out everything that is wrong at the place. When you get to this phase, you're now accepting, okay, this is how they do things. Right or wrong, it's just different, right? Once you begin to accept it a little bit, then your daily life becomes a little bit easier. You figure out how the routines kind of work, how things work around wherever you live in that particular area. You work out your transportation issues, and that can always be quite a challenge depending upon what you use, a trike, a scooter, rental, and all of that. And you begin to kind of figure out socially. Like for us, I began to understand that as much as I loved riding a Yamaha motorcycle, you know, a good day for me is to go 2 hours out into the hills and roll through all of Bahal and just explore the mountains. But when it's between 85 and 90 and 70% humidity and you hit the afternoon, it's just going to cook you. So at some point after several weeks of having the motorcycle, probably a month, we transitioned to a rental car. And that just changed the game for us because now we had air conditioning. We could go anywhere at any time without getting fatigued. So not a hard one to figure out, but you begin to adjust. You're like, well, let me try something different. And you just begin to understand why things are the way they are. For example, I was trying to figure out why people left horses, goats, and I guess that's mostly horses, goats. There's always dogs in the province all over the place, but they're not like on a chain or anything. The goats and the horses are, and the cows are the third one. I'm like, why are they always leaving them by the side of the road? Well, they don't use lawnmowers over here. They primarily use goats, and they cut the grass. And that's how they get rid of just kind of the brush on the side of the road. And if they don't have goats, then they either bring out the cow or a horse if they have it. So I didn't see it at first. I drove past it every single day. And then one day it's like, oh, it's obvious. The goats cut the grass. So you begin to understand things and see them for what they are. There's still a little bit of frustration in this third phase. But the frustrations no longer kind of dominate your day or your perspective, and you just kind of go on with life. All right. Once you get to phase 3 and you've worked through that, you've gone through that for a couple of weeks, you kind of hit phase 4, which is called the acceptance phase. The acceptance phase is somewhere between 6 to 12 months. And at that point, you just become more comfortable in this foreign land that you've decided to live in. And you're basically able to navigate the culture a little bit more naturally. It's not so much work, it's just kind of second nature. You know how things work, what you need to do. And that's how you know you've really entered into the acceptance phase. You may even adopt some of the local, habits and routines that they have in that area. You might adjust to some of the food. Maybe you figured out what you like in adobo in the Philippines or whatever that would be. And you're just kind of adjusting ways of thinking to more understanding because that really has increased because you've spent enough time in the country between 6 and 12 months. And so you understand what it takes to kind of get along and live in the country. So that's kind of that phase. Now, they feel a little bit more at home, though they still notice the cultural differences from where they came from, but it feels a little bit more at home and a little bit natural. And that will then lead us to the final phase, which is phase 5, which is called the long-term choice phase. Now, the long-term choice phase usually happens within the first year or two. So you really have got to be in that country for that amount of time. If you are traveling to other countries and moving around constantly, then the time frames on this are going to adjust a little bit. I'll talk to that a little bit more in a second. But expats really fully settle in this last phase, right? And then they decide, am I going to stay here for the long term? Am I going to stay here for 3 to 5 years? They either go that direction, they kind of make a plan and they're comfortable with it, or they feel like, you know what, this place is never gonna feel like home. And maybe it's time to leave, or it's time to try another country. So they either go back to their original home country and try that, or they move on. And you see a lot of expats here in the Philippines. Some of the big names, actually, vloggers, have spent years in the Philippines, and then all of a sudden they go to Vietnam, they go to Thailand, they go to Japan. So those are common things. And those societies actually are a little bit more modern on the infrastructure. And so they have a little bit better transportation systems and residential building systems, a little bit more modern. And so at first that transition becomes a little bit easier. But I think one of the struggles you have in those is that very few people speak English. And to me, that makes the transition a lot harder and something that needs to be considered. So when you enter into that long-term choice phase, you really are at that point of like, is this working for me or is it not? Now, it's important to note that not everyone goes through all of these phases in a straight line, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It can be more like a roller coaster with ups and downs. You might transition to one phase and back up a little bit to another, especially if you move locations within the same country. That's going to affect your transition because now you're having to figure out another area again. All right, so you'll work through these ups and downs, but it may feel a little bit more like a roller coaster instead of a straight line, right? But you're going to go through all of these 5 different phases, and it's really going to depend upon the level of struggle you have adjusting to that new country's culture and way of doing things as to how long it will take to hit each phase and how long you'll stay in that phase. Now, there are a few people that will skip a phase, and there are a few others that may repeat a phase. And that's going to happen, like I said, if you pick up a move within the same country and you go to another location, you may have to go through an adjustment period all again, because now you got to figure out where's the grocery store, where's the transportation, where's the immigration office, all of those different things. So you may repeat a phase if you change your location within the same country. All right? Now, there are some that will never fully adapt to their new surroundings. They just won't accept it. In fact, they'll resist it and they'll refuse to adapt. And they're really making a choice to be stuck into the thinking of where they came from and what they were used to. And so this new country is just not going to work for them. And that's going to make their experience a little bit more miserable, or it's going to increase their desire to go to a different country or head home. And that's what I'm saying. This is why moving to a foreign country is not for everyone. Unless you've got a spirit of adventure and you're willing to put up with some discomfort and you're willing to try something new, then leaving what is familiar behind you may not work. You really have to have a bit of a spirit of adventure or a reason that you want to mix things up and try something new. And that could be a change in life phase. Maybe you headed into retirement, and now that you're retired, you no longer have those relationships in the workplace that you used to have. They start going away. And maybe your friends and family are not what they used to be as you progress in the next life stage, and you're feeling very alone, and you feel like, well, what do I got to lose? I should try something different. I think personally that's a good time to try some of this. Now, I'm still personally working through these phases. So I thought it would be interesting for me to share them with you as I'm experiencing it, as I'm going through it myself. And I researched all this to kind of explain, why am I feeling this way? What is going on? There's a few things for me at this point, at 3 months, that I miss from the US, right? There's some close friends I miss. I miss some of my family for sure. And I'm particularly close to my mom and my sister, so it's hard not to be able to see them. But of course, there's always video calls and all of that. So that helps. Of course, I miss my favorite restaurants back at home. There's a really good Mexican restaurant called the Red Onion. That's one of my favorites. It's been around since I was a kid, and the food hasn't changed in 50 years. So there's some few things like that that I miss back in California. And then there are a lot of things that I can't find here in the Philippines that I was used to back in the US. In fact, I probably should make a separate video on just the things you can't find over here. It's really quite interesting what you can and cannot find. I'll tease you with that for a minute. One challenge over here is trying to find beans. If you're used to making chili or something like that, which I have my own recipe, it's really hard over here to find kidney beans or pinto beans. So those two. I still have not found refried beans in the entire 3 months, searching, oh my gosh, probably 25 grocery stores on multiple islands. You can't find tortillas over here, so you can't make like a burrito. I had an incredibly hard time trying to find pizza crust. I finally found one grocery store that sometimes carries like the shell itself without it, frozen, so I can make pizza. But then I had to find mozzarella, and you can find salami, but it's like really expensive. So there's a lot of things that you can't find. Even yellow mustard is not a standard in the grocery store. I still have not found Lawry seasoning salt. I found a store here that actually's got decent beef at times, and the ground beef in particular, but the seasonings are missing. There's McCormick's in the grocery store, and they have individual things like maybe paprika and a few other things like that. But the basics like Lawry's or whatever your favorite seasoning is for steaks, you're not going to find over here. So there's a lot of things that are missing, and individually they're not a big deal, but they are things that you miss. I would tell you one thing, before you come to the Philippines, if you're coming for a few months, make sure you bring seasonings with you, because that is one of the things that's missing. So you can't make that, favorite pot of chili or like tacos, enchiladas, tostadas, forget it, right? You can find some of the individual elements like tomatoes. They do have California cheddar cheese here that is pretty good, that they probably import. So you can find a couple of the elements, but a lot of things are missing, but the seasoning is the one you can't replace. All right, enough of that. The one last thing I want to mention is that if you are running away from personal issues in your home country, and it's something that you haven't worked through yet, and you're thinking, okay, I want to just escape this. Well, you may escape those feelings for a little while. But if they are relational type issues, things that you really need to work through, they're going to resurface at some point when you're in whatever country you end up at. My suggestion to you is to try to work through those issues as much as you can before you leave. But for some people that are going through it, like a transition phase in their life, a change in status, maybe they were married, they went through a painful divorce, and maybe that's just disrupted their entire world. Or let's say that they're hitting retirement, and now they're feeling very alone and not as connected, and trying to figure out what is left in life at this point that I've kind of hit retirement. In my opinion, if you're looking for a fresh new start, then the Philippines and other foreign countries that you can research might just give you the option to live a much happier and a more fulfilled life, because expectations are different over here. So if you've gone through one of these significant life changes, divorce, loss of a spouse, loss of other loved ones, retirement, major change in career, whatever it would be, you owe it to yourself to come over for a little while and just check it out. Take the chance and see if it might work for you. In the worst case, you can just head home. All right, that's my opinion. Try it for a few months. Don't sell everything in the U.S. Do it in steps. Come over for a few months, try it. Then go back and then finish up whatever you need to finish up. I think your ideal situation, if you can do it, is to maintain some type of place to live in the States, and then find a place in the Philippines, whatever country that you're going to go to, and go back and forth for a while until you know for sure that's the right thing for you. That's what I've done. All right, well, that's going to do it for this video. I hope you learned something new, and I hope it prepares you for this transition of moving overseas. And I hope you decide to embark on this adventure, because it can be very fulfilling and exciting, especially if you meet somebody new. And again, if you're considering this, my advice to you is to come up with a timeline. You need a plan. Just kind of lay out a piece of paper, write it down, and say, here's my timeline for the next, whether 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever it's going to be for you. And begin to plan out how you're going to do this. And then pick a date and say, okay, on this date, I'm going to come over here for a few months, and I'm going to try it. And just see if it works for you. Look, in the worst case, you can go back home if it doesn't work out. Don't sell everything you have. Right? Don't do that first. You can do this in phases. You can always go back to your home country and close things out once you've confirmed your decision is right for living overseas. I mean, what do you have to lose if it doesn't work out? You just go home. It's that simple. just leave that door open so you can. You may be surprised just how much you actually like a different culture and place. And for some, a fresh start is really what they needed. And it jumpstarts their life again, and they find fulfillment and happiness. And maybe, just maybe, they'll meet someone special that changes everything, right? Gives you a completely different perspective on life. Well, thanks for watching. And until next time, make sure you check out the videos on Island Expats, and I welcome your feedback. Let me know what you think of this video, but I really appreciate you taking the time. And I hope if you do go overseas, you study these 5 phases, maybe make a note of the 5 names that they are, so that you're prepared for when you go overseas. And it happens to you, you'll understand what you're going through. All right, take care. Thanks for watching.